How do I prevent cancer? Probably one of the most important questions you want to ask yourself. It is the number 2 killer. Still, heart disease and strokes are the number 1 killer in America. But cancer is a close number 2, and it is rising fast. Many people believe genetics are the cause of cancer, and you were just born to have cancer, and that's what kind of conventional medicine is leading people to believe. But if you watch my previous video on the causes of cancer, you'll remember that only 5 to 10% of cancers are actually genetic, which means the majority of them are caused by other reasons. The root causes, the triggers that I talked about in the last video. So in order to understand this video about prevention, you'll really want to go back and start at that causes video. And I even did another video on the grand overview of cancer and how to treat cancer, both how to prevent it and treat it. That video of my cancer diagram serves as a broad overview, the 10,000 foot overview of the forest to find out the lay of the land before you dive in looking in the trees individually. So we're going to dive into the trees on prevention of cancer to learn more. I'm Dr. Philip Oob. I'm a functional medicine doctor here in Austin, Texas, and we're going to talk about prevention of cancer. So let's dive in. So whenever I say, how do I prevent cancer, probably the first things that come to your mind are these things. The mammograms, the pap smears, the colonoscopies, the vaccines, the prostate exams, the PSA tests, all of those things. But what you may not know is those tests, despite being talked about as preventative medicine, those are actually considered early detection tests. So why are they considered early detection? Because when you do a mammogram, that's not preventing cancer. That's finding out if you have a breast cancer. If you have any triggers or anything contributing to the cancer, that's not going to tell you that you're contributing to cancer, you're causing cancer. All it's going to tell you is that no, you do not have cancer at that moment. In addition to all of these things, they have risks. The mammogram is a risk for developing cancer with the radiation. It's also an early finding, so you might even get treated for cancer that didn't affect you because it was found too early. All kinds of controversies around the early detection. I'll save that for another video. What I want to focus on in this video is the prevention of cancer. So, how do I prevent cancer? I'm going to sum it up for you really easily in this video right here. Slide right here, not video. How do I prevent cancer? You need to heal your gut. You need to remove toxins. You need to eat nutrient-dense foods, not calorie-dense. Oreos are calorie-dense. Broccoli is nutrient-dense. Okay? Avoid sugar. Restore nutrients, meaning the zincs and minerals that you've lost. You need to move your body. Sedentary behavior, sitting is the new smoking. And then, of course, fasting, which is a lost art. So we're going to go through other slides, but this is the summary slide. This is the meat of this whole video. If you do these things, then you're already reversing your risks for cancer. You're reducing your risks of cancer, as well as heart disease, strokes, dementia, everything else that can kill you by doing all of these things. So let's get into some of the details. So the causes of cancer, as we talked about in my last video, is basically too much damage to your DNA, and eventually that DNA gets overwhelmed and the damage causes problems, and then you have cancer because of the DNA damage. The other way to look at it is maybe you don't have too much damage. Maybe you're not a cigarette smoker, but you have too little healing because you didn't eat enough nutrients and your body can't repair and heal. So what are the ways to prevent cancer? Well, that's simple. You decrease the damages. So if you're smoking or if you're eating inflammatory foods or you're exposed to chemicals and toxins or whatever, you prevent that damage. You stop doing that, as well as you increase the healing. So you take antioxidants, you eat food with antioxidants, you de-stress your body, all of those things. So preventing cancer is actually fairly straightforward. It's your lifestyle that makes it complicated. And that's why working with a functional medicine practitioner can help you analyze what are my smoking guns, what are my triggers, what are my witches brew, as we talked about in my causes video. So here are the triggers of cancer that I've listed out, and we're going to talk about each one individually. I talked extensively about them and the causes of cancer, not so much in this video, but basically to list them real quickly, it's gut issues, biological toxins, mold toxins, environmental chemicals, think man-made stuff, heavy metals like lead and mercury, and then emotional toxins, think stress and trauma. So how do I prevent cancer? Number one is by treating the triggers. So these triggers, let's just start with gut issues. So gut issues just make sense. Gut issues disrupts your immune system. Your gut is we talk about it as the external and the analysis of your external environment inside. Why do babies put everything in their mouth? It's their immune system's way of analyzing the environment. We don't wear an immune system on the outside. Yes, you have an immune system in your skin, but it can't really analyze the environment because the skin is such a strong barrier. So when you put things in your mouth, when babies put their fingers in their mouth or food or toys or whatever in their mouth, they're swallowing those biological toxins, those bacteria, those fungi. So the immune system can learn what's in the environment and identify what's normal and what's not normal. So as the gut overgrows bad bacteria or bad fungi because of wrong food, too many carbs, too much sugar, too many antibiotics, whatever it may be, as the gut gets dysfunctional, then the immune system doesn't understand the environment because it's overgrowing bad bacteria. So it starts heightening its military. It starts fighting more, causing more inflammation because it knows that bacterial overgrowth is not good and it's trying to fight it, but it can't because your lifestyle continues to feed those bad guys. In addition, when you're eating bad foods, of course, you get poor nutrients. It's safe to say that, as we mentioned earlier, Oreos have lots of calories, but not much nutrients. Zinc, magnesium, manganese, molybdenum, all those little minerals and nutrients that feed your biochemical reactions aren't present in those foods. They taste good, but they're full of sugar and they don't have a lot of nutrients. In addition, as you eat these bad foods, cause inflammation and decrease your nutrients, you get more and more biological overgrowth of candida or bacteria, whatever it may be. Something is overgrowing your bowels, and sinuses and lungs can overgrow anywhere where there's nutrients. So as those things overgrow, they themselves make chemicals and toxins. So then they contribute to biological toxins and mold toxins. Just like we talked about with mold both is a living, growing organism that makes toxins called mycotoxins. Those mycotoxins are not living, they're chemicals, they're gases. Well, same thing with biological organisms. Candida makes toxins that cause immune dysfunction and inflammation, and those toxins need to be detoxified. So that's one way to prevent cancer. In addition, you have other triggers, these toxic triggers. Once they're inside you, they cause issues. So one of the ways all these toxins cause issues, they create oxidative stress, or ROS, reactive oxygen species. We'll get into that in the next slide, but just know that oxidative stress is a bad thing. You know most likely that antioxidants are a good thing. Antioxidants are a good thing because they're antioxidants. Oxidants are a bad thing. They create inflammation. Too much toxins causes inflammation. That just makes sense. They inhibit detoxification. So that's kind of the catch-22. As you get more and more toxic, your own detoxification processes slow down because those toxins inhibit your detoxification. So you get toxic even faster and faster. In addition, it inhibits your immune system. So mold toxins specifically have learned how to inhibit your immune system and break your immune system in order to make you more vulnerable to infections and to more mold. In fact, mold toxins are so good at disrupting your immune system that the pharmaceutical companies manufacture a mold toxin called mycophenolate, also known as Cellcept, a drug that we use for transplants. And the reason you use it for transplants is because it prevents the immune system from attacking the transplant. So the pharmaceutical company knows the mold toxins are good at affecting the immune system, so they've harnessed it. So mold toxins affect your immune system. Chemicals do, heavy metals do, all of these things inhibit your immune system. And if you watch any of my other videos on cancer, then you know that the immune system is the main way your body polices cancer. So if a foreign cell starts to create cancer, that cell is identified as foreign and killed and not allowed to propagate. So how do I prevent cancer? We would talk about this reactive oxygen species on the next slide. So let's see the next slide. So this is a very busy slide designed to make me look really smart and I get to point out what I want to. But joking aside, reactive oxygen species are the way that DNA damage ultimately happens, whether it's toxic overload or gut issues, whatever it may be. These damages basically cause damage to your lipids, which is your cell membranes, the outside of your cells. They also cause damage to the DNA. As the DNA gets damaged, then your risk for cancer increases, because if the DNA gets mutated and your on switch gets turned permanently on, you get cancer. If your off switch turns permanently off, then the cell gets to divide invincibly and cause cancer. So there are actually tests to look for that, the lipid peroxides and 8-OH-DG. Those both look for damage of those lipids and those DNA damages to see if you're at risk. That's a test your doctor can order. Most doctors don't know about it. Only functional medicine doctors order that. Here, they're showing that nickel, the metal, the heavy metal, nickel causes reactive oxygen species and DNA binding issues, ultimately overwhelms your DNA repair system. And then as you get genome instability, that's just saying the DNA is not able to repair itself. As you get DNA repair errors, then you get cancer. So how do you prevent cancer? Well, prevent the reactive oxygen species. So more on how do I prevent cancer by treating the triggers. Emotional toxins. We can't forget about emotional toxins. They're invisible. They're impossible to measure. There's no test you can go and see how much stress you're under, or test you can do to see how that emotional trigger affected you. And the same emotional trigger for two different people can cause drastically different reactions. I like to point out a burning building. Someone's going to be running around panicking. Another person is going to be calm and collected, trying to figure out how to help as many people as possible. Two totally different reactions to the same exact stressor. So emotional toxins itself, as we talk about in my adrenal videos and other stress videos, that emotional toxins and stress do all of the bad things. They create inflammation. They inhibit detoxification. They inhibit your immune system. And if you don't believe that, then just look at anyone that has chronic stress at their job. They commonly get sicker more. Chronic stress at home, they commonly get sicker more often, and more severe versions of viruses and whatnot. So the toxic burden is all about the witch's brew. It may not be any one thing that caused your cancer. It may be a combination of three things, or a combination of all five things. Like I've talked about before, this witch's brew is a multiplier of each other. So it may not be just that you had biological overgrowth of candida, and it may not be that you just had mold toxins, but you had a little bit of each, and those two multiplied, causing the cancer. So if you can reverse those, if you can avoid those, then you don't get the cancer. So real simple, we talked earlier about how to prevent cancer, and so I'm going to break it down based on the triggers. So if you want to reverse your gut issues, then you need to do gut restoration. I have an online course on how to restore your gut. You can become a patient. We can walk you through one-on-one, but if you want to do it yourself, go online, take my gut restoration. All my secrets of how we treat patients in the office are in that gut restoration course. If you've treated the gut and you're ready to move on to the toxic burden, then you start treating these toxic burdens through a process called lipid exchange, which is another course I have on detoxification. Lipid exchange is kind of the idea of an oil change. As your car gets miles and miles and miles, you got to go take the car in to do an oil change. They drain all the dirty, damaged oil out, and they put brand new oil in, and then you drive off. Well, you're not a car, you're not an automobile, so we can't just take your oil out and put new in. So we have to exchange it slowly. Think about it as if you were taking your car every day and put a little bit of new oil in and drained a little bit of oil every day. That's what you do to your body. You slowly exchange those damaged lipids, those damaged membranes, for healthier membranes, and your body eliminates the damaged ones. That's where toxins like to migrate and hold on to, and we have trouble removing them in our lipids. If you have too many heavy metals, first of all, you need to be tested, not just treated for heavy metals. You need to be tested to see if you have too many heavy metals. If you have too many heavy metals, then you need to undergo a process called chelation. Chelation is the removal of those heavy metals. And last but not least, if you have emotional toxins and stress and overburdened trauma, whatever it may be, you might need therapy. You might need to use psychedelic therapy with either ketamine or psilocybin or some sort of therapy-assisted treatment to help overcome that trauma, to help overcome that stressor. You might be stuck in a bad cycle and need those psychedelics to help you move past that situation, of course, assisted with a therapist. So if you develop cancer, then we would get into this diagram as far as inhibiting the growth and stimulating the cell death. So even though you don't have cancer and you're trying to prevent cancer, by doing these same things, you can stress and inhibit and prevent all of the microscopic cancers that are trying to develop by inhibiting the growth and stimulating the cell death. So I'll briefly go through this diagram, but this is more for after you get cancer, but you can use some of these treatments before you get cancer in order to prevent it. And if you're doing these things on the daily, then you won't ever get cancer and ever need to do this. So I like to focus on treating cancer and preventing cancer by inhibiting the growth as well as stimulating the cell death. And if you're stimulating the death, then a new cell will grow in its place and it won't be cancer. So in order to inhibit the growth, you focus on reducing inflammation, reducing sugar, reducing mental stress, reducing oxidative damage, rebalancing the hormones, and making sure genetics aren't a problem. In order to stimulate the cell death, you want to stimulate that immune system to make sure it's policing for cancer. You want to starve the cancer. You want to metabolically stress that cancer and do some cellular toxicity if you want to take it a next step. Now, I'm going to go into a little more in depth in my other video on this diagram, went into more detail. But basically, to summarize it, in all of these situations, you want to use some sort of treatment on each one of these in order to prevent cancer. Don't make it too cumbersome. As we talked about in one of the first slides, eat healthy, move your body, don't expose yourself to toxins. That's the take-home message. But if you want to get nitty-gritty and really prevent cancer, then you want to start doing some of these things to prevent the likelihood of ever getting cancer. In addition, you can stimulate the cell death by boosting the immune system, some of the other things we talked about. I scratched off several things from this diagram because you don't need to do those if you don't have cancer. But in this world, if you're trying to prevent cancer, you can still use some of these things to prevent it. So hyperthermia, by getting fevers or exposing yourself to infrared rays, and sauna therapy can actually prevent cancer. Doing high-dose vitamin C and oral vitamin C can boost the immune system to police you for cancer. Fasting, that's something we should all be doing. And I don't mean 30-day fast or anything like that, but a 3-day fast here and there, maybe a 5-day, in order to kill off those old cells that might be getting more cancerous and regenerate new healthy cells. Fasting is an excellent tool that we just don't use nowadays. We're constantly exposed to nutrients and calories, so we don't fast anymore. Fasting used to be a part of life when food ran out. You can metabolically stress by making sure you have enough nutrients and zinc and manganese and all that, as well as doing the lipid exchange, which is the detox we talked about. Finding a light bed or buying red light to expose your cells to light therapy to regenerate them. If you can feed your cells energy, then they will fight cancer for you. And then, of course, you can do some cellular toxicity, but you don't want to do cellular toxicity stuff like chemo that might damage you. You want to do healing, healthy type things that both stress microscopic cancers, but don't stress you enough to cause other risks. So hyperbaric oxygen therapy, which is the chamber where you get under pressure, breathing 100% oxygen. IV ozone, I'm a big fan of an IV high-dose vitamin C, that's what the HD stands for. All things you can do to stimulate cell death before you get cancer. So just to summarize, cancer prevention does not mean early detection. So yes, still do your early detection, that you have a consult with your doctor to talk about the risks and benefits of doing it, but don't think early detection is prevention. Reduce the triggers, you inhibit the cancer growth, and you stimulate the cell death. Those are the keys to the kingdom. That's how you prevent cancer. So my next video in the series is going to be on testing for cancer. And no, we're not just going to talk about pap smears and mammograms. We're actually going to talk about the test. If you have cancer, what are the tests I need to be doing to make sure I give myself the best chances of survival, the best ability to fight the cancer, and the best chances to get into remission. So stay tuned to the next video in this series. Like, comment, please share this video with anyone that you know is either worried about cancer or already has cancer, or with someone that you find this could be helpful for.